Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this finds you well. In the last lecture, we comprehensively talked about the do's and don'ts of letter writing, right? We talked about, the instructions about IELTS letter writing, when we talked about the types of IELTS letters, and different other things, how to distinguish between a formal letter, informal letter, semi-formal letter, where the examiner report is on a sample line, on a band score 9 letter, right? And we looked at some samples of different sorts of letters as well. So today we're gonna talk a bit more about things about like letter aims, opening your letter, signing off, grammar, vocabulary, spelling, structure and paragraph, as well as how to plan your letter, right? So today I'm just going to try to summarize letter, in a nutshell, okay, and just wind up with this chapter. Okay, so for starters, let's just remember some instructions, okay? So first of all is that it's ideal to spend 20 minutes on the letter, okay? So you spend 3 or 5 minutes planning, right? And then you spend the rest of the time writing. Always try to leave 2 minutes, to check your letter for spelling or grammatical mistakes, right? Because you're going to be needing a fully fledged 40 minutes for task 2. So do not go over 20 minutes for task 1. It is your responsibility, fellas, to control the time in your writing test, yours and yours only. Now, ideally, as far as task 1 letter is concerned for general IELTS, I recommend students to write over 150 words and, generally try to aim between 160 and 180 now to be safe. Writing a letter over 300 words, frankly, to me, is a waste of time, right? Just remember that your letter is worth 1/3 of your final score, 33.33%. So, and yeah, once again, you do not need to write an address on the letter, right? Pay close attention to who you're writing to and the relationship you have with that person. This will decide your your style of writing and your tone. Pay attention to the aim and the purpose of the letter, right? On top of that, just make sure that you use the 3 points to the 3 bullet points that you're given in the question, as we talked about in the previous video, that you use them very carefully to structure your letter and provide the foundation for the information. Now, all points must be included clearly in your letter. If you fail to include all these points in your letter, your band score will be lower, and you must use your imagination, to fill in the details and decides the name of the people in your letter. And you begin your letter by addressing the person and then an opening line. Always remember to sign off appropriately. Now, as I also talked about in the previous class, okay, there are 3 categories of IELTS letters mentioned below. Okay, you basically got formal letter, you have semi-formal letter, and then you have an informal letter. Okay, so now I'm just going to do a quick screen share and we look at what are the general types of aims in the letter. Okay, so like I talked about before, letters can be based on different contents, right, which can affect the style of the letter. So below is a list of some of the common contents. Okay, it could be complaints letter, which is usually formal. Then invitations. Now, invitations could be informal or it could be semi-formal, right? If it's your boss inviting you, it's semi-formal. If it's your friend or your family member inviting you for lunch or high tea or a session or a get together at their place, right, it's generally going to be informal. So you have to read carefully and figure it out from the tone, right? If we are talking about applications or resignations, they are usually formal, right? Apart from that, requests, right? In the request, any style is common, right? If you're talking about making arrangements, they often come under the category of formal letters. Explanations, sometimes informal, sometimes semi-formal. Once again, you gotta see, right? And informative or newsletters, often they're informal or semi-formal, but they can also be formal. An apology can once again be of any style, okay? Then we talk about how to make openings, okay? So you see, an opening is very important, fellas. It sets the tone, okay, for whatever you're doing. And yeah, it's your ending is also very important. So you don't just think, I'm just going to give a I'm just going to give a generic introduction. I'm just going to give a superficial conclusion. And, as long as I'm acing the body, it's all good. No, your start, finish, it needs to be equally, pristine as well. Okay, so letters usually start with an opening statement which explains the reason for writing the letter, right? The opening statement, it varies depending on whether you're writing a formal letter or an informal letter, and we can look at some examples of an opening statement. Okay, so for example, if I look at statement number A over here, right, it says that I'm writing this letter with regards to the scholarship program to study at London University. I'm writing this letter with regards to the scholarship program to study at London University, which I read in the Sunday Times on the 1st December 2014. Now, it's very clear that he's probably addressing that to the foreign education counselor, or he's doing that to the university admission office, right? Therefore, this is definitely going to be a formal letter without any doubt. Then, uh, After that, we look at statement number B, Bravo, right? Says it's been so long since we last were in touch, but I haven't forgotten all the wonderful times we spent together last year. It's my birthday coming up, and I want to invite you over to stay at my place for the celebration. Now, this could be this definitely comes under the category of an informal or personal letter. Okay, and then a semi-formal letter could be something like your boss, someone but you don't share a cordial relationship with, right? So he's saying to you, I'm just writing to say thank you for the offer of joining your company, right? So that could be under the category of semi-formal letter, right? Now, also something that we need to be aware of when you're signing off, right? Right, you have to be very careful. Okay, I see people, writing stuff like, you know, PIA, like the acronyms, or they're talking about, your loving, your dear. I mean, all sorts of cheesy stuff, right? So just make sure that you're very professional and to the point, right? So depending on the style and aim of the letter, you will need to adapt your font, sentence, or comment. So, dear sir or madam, that's how obviously that's how you start, but then how you're going to sign off is you can sign off by saying yours sincerely, yours faithfully. Okay, just try to keep it simple. I often see people saying, I'm just a text or phone call away whenever I'm needed, or blessed art thou, may the good Lord confer up the thorough blessings upon you, my liege. I mean, there's no need to indulge in these sort of literary white collar rats, like call them, right? Just keep it simple, follow it, and just get the job done in an effective manner, right? So in the formal letters, you can sign off as yours sincerely, yours faithfully. For example, you can start the formal letter as dear Mr. Robson, or dear John Robson, right? And you can sign it off as yours sincerely or yours faithfully. Agar aap baat kare, if you're talking about, an informal or a semi-formal letter, you can start off as hi Dave or dear Dave, and closing off could be see you soon, take care, all the best. Okay. Now, it's very one thing is very important for us to factor into consideration, and that is the fact that you sir or madam when you don't know the person's name that you're writing to. You use sir, madam when you don't know the person's name that you're writing to. For example, when you write to a manager of the hotel or the local council, right? You do not use these titles if you know the name of the person. You should not use those titles in your speaking test. You can also write a formal letter to someone whose name, you can use, like I said, you can use either Mr. Robson or John Robson, right? And obviously, when we are addressing a friend, when we're writing a letter, when we're dispatching a letter to a friend, right? We use no title and we use no last name. Okay. So below are some examples of final comments before signing off. Can you tell which one's a formal, which one is not? It will be great to catch up again soon. Give my best to everyone in the family. Obviously, this denotes an element of familiarity, an element of friendliness, an element of compassion, an element of intimacy, right? Personal intimacy. Therefore, this is definitely coming under the category of an informal letter. Okay, and then I look forward to hearing from you. Definitely, this sounds something that is a much more, it's much more formulaic. It's much more formal, right? So it can come off as a formal letter. Now, next up, let's talk about names, okay, fellas? So as far as names are concerned, you should most definitely write a name at the end of your letter. You can use your name or you should invent one, right? Dear sir, so when you talk at the end, right, you give your name, yours faithfully, John Brown, okay? So obviously, if it's a formal letter, okay, if in the case of a formal letter, you give your full name, but without a title, okay? And, you can also write Mrs. Susan Harper with or without a title, right? And if it's obviously an informal letter, it's hi Dave or dear Dave, see you soon, comma, bracket, Brian or Hamza or Mohammad or whatever, right? Once again, no title and no family name, because in this case, it is what? It is an informal letter. All righty. Now, next up, right, let's be aware of some things in regards to our grammar. Let's talk about formal as well as informal grammar that we gotta, factor into consideration, right? So formal and informal letters, they contain different languages style writing. Obviously, that's a no-brainer, right? So while informal letters can contain contractions like I, comma, I'm writing, right? My name's Mohammad, right? So these are all contractions, right? That involve the apostrophe, right? So while informal letters can contain contractions, these contractions are unacceptable in formal writing. Okay, these contractions are unacceptable in formal writing. So you need to follow, basically write the words in full. Okay, I'm writing dash 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 with regards to blah blah blah. Okay, in a formal letter you could write I'm writing with regards to etc etc. Whereas for a semi-formal letter you can write I'm, right? That's the contraction about, or I'm, once again a contraction, writing to say, or I just want to let you know that. So it is important here to adapt your writing to suit the style of the letter. Always remember to use a range of different sentence structures, in order to get a high score, because like I said before, repetitions, they give a bad impression, right? And they drag down your band score. Okay. Um, Apart from that, fellas, we talk about vocabulary, okay? Formal as well as informal, right? So for vocabulary, you got to be very careful using academic language in a personal letter. So this would be inappropriate, right? Obviously, if you're being too formal and officious, or what should I say, judicious, right? In a personal letter, that's not right, all right? It's going to be inappropriate and it will reduce your band score rather than increase it. Here are some examples of the difference between formal and informal language, okay? So, you will be collected at the airport. That is formal. Now let's contrast it with a personal style. It says, I'll pick you up at the airport, right? Once again, the next available appointment is on Thursday. That's formal. Let's talk about informal. It's going to be, how about we meet up on Thursday, right? And I would like to invite you to visit my house on so and so date, right? That's formal. Then why don't you pop around to my place on so and that's obviously more informal. Similarly, fellas, um, it says over here, I highly recommend that you come in August, right? That is formal. It would be great if you come in August. That's obviously informal, right? Please respond at the earliest convenience, right? I await your urgent response on the matter, right? I await your prompt response on the respective scenario, right? So that's obviously going to be a formal setting, whereas informal is going to be get back to me as soon as you can, okay? Or get back to me whenever possible, right? Formal, once again, is unfortunately, I'll not be able to attend on. Informal is going to be sorry, I won't be able to make it. So you got to be aware of these distinctions, fellas. It's very pertinent to your class. Next up, let's talk about spellings and punctuations. Okay, so obviously, like I said this over and over again, the examiner is going to check your accuracy in your spelling, your punctuation. Okay, so this means your use of commas and full stops. So fellas, start cracking open these newspapers from now, those magazines, those research articles, whatever. Okay, just make sure that you don't avoid you avoid these sort of mistakes. Okay, so if you make frequent errors in spelling or in punctuation, it will become difficult for you to attain a band score of above 6. Next up, let's talk about structure and paragraphs, right? So, like I said before, obviously, right, be it a formal letter, be it an informal letter, or be it a semi-formal letter, right? It always starts with the title. Then paragraph 1, that's your opening statement, why you're writing to that fella, right? Your reason for writing, right? Then paragraph 2, that's gonna be body paragraph in which you go in detail in regards to the bullet point 1 supporting details, right? Then your paragraph 3, it is body paragraph B in which you talk about bullet point 2 and supporting details, and same case in paragraph 40, which is the third body paragraph in which the same drill is repeated with bullet point 3 and its respective supporting details, right? Then finally give a closing statement if that is needed, right? And then you sign off with a name. Okay, you can either give your name or you can make up someone, right? But just make sure you adhere to the guidelines that I've just talked about previously. I mean, so far in this video, as well as in the previous one that we made about the letter writing. So, and finally, I'm just going to end it here by once again talking about planning or writing, right? Obviously, it's very important to have a plan in life, right? If you got a plan, you got a smart recipe for success, right? If you don't have a plan, you are just, you're just winging it, I mean, you're just operating on a Hail Mary, I mean, and that unfortunately creates more problems than it solves, right? So make sure you do your research, before you delve into the matter, okay? Like I said again, how to make a rough sketch, how to make an outline, the top things. So let's talk about again. You should spend at least 3 or 4 minutes planning your letter covering, or you should spend at least 3 or 4 minutes planning your letter covering, covering all the points in your letter, adding details, using the appropriate style of letter writing, and using paragraphs will count for about 50% of your marks. Okay, so it's worth taking time, to plan your letter well. Okay, follow the points below for a well-planned letter. So obviously, number one, it goes without saying, number one, you got to read the instructions. The number two, identify what style of letter you must write. Is it talking about a formal letter, informal, semi-formal? We've talked about in the previous lecture how to distinguish, right? So then read through the points that you must include in your letter, okay? Then think about how many paragraphs you will have and where to put each point, right? Like I said, the structuring is of paramount importance, right? Good coherence is going to have a profoundly positive impact on your overall band score, fellas. Then plan what information you're going to add to each point, right? And remember one thing, that it's not just about quantity, it's also about quality, right? Decide how to open the letter. Think about the language you will use. That is both grammar as well as vocabulary. It must suit the style of the letter, and then decide how to close the letter, plan the content of each body paragraph, and, voila, start writing, okay? So, fellas, I hope that you found these videos helpful and informative, and I hope that the task one of our general writing, that is the letter, is going to appear a tad bit easier to you after these sessions that I've given you, right? Once again, if you have any sort of query, just feel free, to attack the comment box, right? And float your reservations. That'll be my pleasure to solve them. I'll get back to it whenever I can, right? And thank you so much. God bless you all, and see you soon next time. Assalamu alaikum.